Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to NOLA Theater Talk. My name is Alan Smason, and we have a very special guest tonight with us, none other than James Monroe Iglehart, Tony Award winner. We're going to talk about the fantastic job he's going to be doing soon, honoring our own Louis Armstrong, of great fame here in New Orleans. But we'll talk about that now as we get ready to talk about A Wonderful World. James, welcome back. You probably have met so many people in your career. I don't even know if you even remember back in 2014, a little thing you were doing called Aladdin, where you won the Tony Award, and there were so many people coming back after. This is pre-COVID, of course. So
of course,
who were visiting the stage door.
Oh yeah.
Afterwards. And there happened to be one of your adoring fans who was there in 2014 to see you perform. None other than yours truly. I don't even know. It was a Saturday afternoon, and it was a fantastic. You may notice I had a little VIP Disney thing. I paid the whole ride.
Wow. Okay. I remember those. That used to trip me out. The people were like paying for the front because they got a picture of the genie and they got the drink and a little placard. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm delighted to be able to say hello to you again. And again, I've been watching through the pandemic, et cetera. You've done so many different things. And of course, we'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that you've done recently. But first off, give me a little bit of insight. How did you first become aware of the project, the background on A Wonderful World? How did you first become acquainted with the role?
Actually, it was during the pandemic that it happened. Like everybody else, I was sitting in the house with my family trying to figure out what to do, and we're all watching Netflix, of course. And the Ken Burns documentary Jazz came on, and I've always wanted to watch it but never had time. So we're like, yeah, let's sit down and watch it. And I believe it's episode 2 or 3 really talked about Louis Armstrong. And I became fascinated with the man. I was like, oh my gosh, this story needs to be a musical. It really needs to be a musical. And so I checked with my reps to see if anybody had written one, and sure enough, someone had. And so I said, oh, well, dang, I'm a little late. So, please, why don't you contact him, let him know I'd like to be a part of it in whatever capacity, behind the scenes, in front, whatever. And then after the pandemic was over, I got a call from my agents and said, hey, they know you're interested and they want to talk to you. And that's how it all began.
So the role was kind of offered to you directly. You didn't have to go through any kind of audition process or anything.
Not really. It was more of we sat down and had meetings to see if, this was a project I wanted to do. And by the time I got to that stage, I had been doing lots of research on Louis Armstrong and reading his books and watching every video I possibly could just to be ready for whatever questions they wanted to ask me. And that's kind of how it happened. And once they saw that I was really dedicated to trying to bring this role to life, they were like, yeah, let's go with you.
And again, you mentioned that you really first became knowledgeable of his effect on jazz and the important role that he had when you were watching the Ken Burns documentary.
Yes,
but I assume you had heard him do.
Oh gosh, yeah, I knew who he was. I knew who Satchmo was. I knew Louis Armstrong. I knew like most people know. I know A Wonderful World, and I knew Hello Dolly, but I didn't realize what an impact that he had made on music as a whole, especially just American music, and what an icon that he was. And how really there's trumpet players before Louis and then trumpet players after Louis. He's the one that kind of changed the game, and to realize that, and then to see the barriers he broke down and how he was, used good and bad to, help America look a certain way. And then all the different things he went through with his own identity, his own race, and dealing with the larger race as a whole. He was one of the big first pop artists, like what we consider a pop artist today. He was that. He was everywhere. He's on radio, TV, all kinds of posters. I mean, he was the pop star of his generation, and I didn't know that. And that part is what interests me. I was like, wow, that's a whole different thing than me being a young guy going, oh, that's that older guy who smiles and sings those 2 songs with a gruff voice. No, he was an incredible entertainer. and was packing out houses all over the world, and people were clamoring to see him. And that I was like, okay, I need to know more about that guy, and that's what got me interested.
And again, you were born 3 years after he died. So
Yes.
everything you knew about him was from either history books or from books or films.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, and again, I assume that you did as someone growing up was exposed, as you said, like Cabaret, What a Wonderful World, things of that sort, but no idea about the impact he had at such an early work.
No, not really. And what's funny is I'm such a Disney kid, that it all made me laugh because now that I know who he is, you can see his influence in certain cartoons. You see his influence in Aristocats. There's that cat that plays the trumpet. Although it's voiced by Scatman Carruthers, it was originally supposed to be voiced by Louis Armstrong, and he plays a trumpet and has this gravelly voice, and just the way he talks, that was supposed to be Louis. The crocodile in the Princess and the Frog. Disney is also based on Louis Armstrong. I mean, there were so many things that Louis was supposed to do or influenced by him. Watching Looney Tunes cartoons and that rooster with a trumpet, you're like, oh, that's Louis. Oh my God, I had no idea. And once I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, these are all homages to Louis Armstrong, and how so many comedians of the 70s and 80s, if you were an impressionist, you had to do a Louis Armstrong voice. It was amazing, like what he's such a moment, a really large moment in American culture, and his story deserves to be told.
Of course, that the most famous role he turned down was for Disney.
Yes.
That was King Louis.
Louis. Yeah.
And he turned it down for obvious reasons.
Obvious reasons. Like they came to him and said, we want you to do this role. And his people were like, it's an orangutan. And he was like, man, I can't do that. And the great part is, he it went to, Louis Prima. And I love that they found a Louis. But
yes, they did.
They found, it was like, oh, okay, we just found a drummer instead. It's fantastic.
And of course, another New Orleans connection, because Louis Prima was from New Orleans. And again, we can call him Louis, but he always referred to himself in the first
as Louis.
Always.
Yes, always.
And I bore that out. Ricky Riccardi from the Louis Armstrong House Museum in Queens, had said that pretty much on a regular basis. Have you, by the way, gotten a chance to go there?
Yes.
So,
yes,
you really are steeped in it now, aren't you?
Oh yeah, yes. I really, I've now become an even bigger fan than I was. At first I was just like, oh, this is really cool, but now I feel dedicated to tell his story as best as possible, because he was one of the only African American artists at the time to write his own autobiography. 2 of them actually, and he also wrote tons of letters. He was an avid writer, constantly writing letters to people, or he was the only artist that had a typewriter with him on tour. So after his shows, he would write to friends, to colleagues, to dignitaries. He always wanted what he said to come from him, so no one else could do his story. So it's ironic that we're telling the story, but we're telling it through the narrator of his 4 wives. And the reason why we're doing that is because we wanted to be a little bit different, but it's his story the way he wanted to be told. But you kind of get the 4 different stages of his life. When he was really, really young, in his 20s, when he was in his 30s and 40s, when he was in his stride, when he was at the height of his, popularity, to his twilight years, when out of the blue, he was blacklisted and then became another gigantic hit maker with Hello, Dolly and What a Wonderful World. It's wonderful to see him, not wonderful, but it's interesting to see him go through these dark times and then still come out like a phoenix, because that's just the caliber and spirit of the man, to be able to say, what, I'm down, but I'm not out. And not only am I not out, I'll be the older guy who can knock the Beatles off number 1. And so, to be able to do that, yep. Not many people were able to do that. And for Louis Armstrong, and not to do it with Motown did it, but it was a pop tune. Louis did it with a Broadway hit.
and again, he also did another Broadway hit. If you remember, he did Mac the Knife.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
In the charts but again, was a standard that
that
great
that everyone, it's amazing. Like those what we call now American standards. Everybody sang them, from Bing to Frank Sinatra to everybody sang these songs. But Louis, because of his vocal quality and his jazz chops, when he did a song, you knew, okay, this is distinctly him. He never tried to do it like anybody else, and that's what made it so much fun.
I see you've already prepared for the role a little bit. I think there's a little bit of something missing.
Yeah, my signature goatee is not there. I'm usually I haven't been this clean shaven since 2009. I did it for a role, and usually I don't. But for this one, I said if I'm going to do it, I'm not going to try to, I gotta go all in. So for this one, only for Louis Armstrong. Only.
And have you been looking at any of the old films I mentioned, like High Society or The Five Pennies, to kind of get an idea about how he held himself, his stature, things of that sort, his serious nature, etc.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's amazing. Like something I noticed I thought was funny. Most of the time, trumpet players will, if you're right-handed, you keep your trumpet in your right hand. Louis was right-handed, but he would hold his trumpet in his, you hold in the left hand and you play, you do the vowels with your right, and then you're right-handed. He would hold the trumpet in his right and then hold the handkerchief in his left. So, but when you're a trumpet player, usually you hold it here. So you would just keep it here until you're ready for your right. He switches, and I would watch concerts, and literally it was so weird. It was like, that was such a weird thing to do, because I would always hold the trumpet here and keep it down. And I realized, nope, he switches and holds it by the bell in this hand with the handkerchief here, wipes his mouth, and then brings it back up. And once I realized that, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to start practicing that transition that he does.
Yeah. Now, were there any parts of the book that really intrigued you to do more research? In other words, that you read about the wives? I'm sure that's part of what you really didn't get exposed to when you were.
No, and it's interesting because when a lot of times it happened, especially nowadays, we look back on history and judge history with our own sentimentality. We look back and we say, well, it's 2023. He had 4 wives. Well, that's terrible. Good God, what was he doing? That's awful. And then you realize everybody at that time, a lot of entertainers at the time, seemed to be married several times. And it was weird. If you look back from the 20s and 30s, like, people were getting married too young, or they were getting married because of Hollywood reasons, or back then they were just like, you know what, I don't want to be married no more. And they would just go and be married to somebody else. They would make a decision. And it wasn't until the 80s that, the Reagan years, when all of a sudden we were like, nope, you must stay married no matter how unhappy you are. You must stay there forever and just deal with the misery that you're in. Well, so looking back, it's interesting to read about the relationships he was in and how you can see his growth. Like, he was 17 when he got married the first time. So you knew he wasn't ready. And when he got married in his 20s, his popularity happened, and he made that interesting entertainer decision where sometimes you get so caught up in the fame that you unfortunately treat someone bad, which is crazy, because Little Harden, who his second wife, they were still friends, and she played at his funeral. And interesting enough, she died she was playing his funeral and died at his funeral. It's not funny, but it was one of those moments. It's one of those moments that here's the second wife.
Yeah.
And she played at his service and had a heart attack during the service. And so,
we mentioned him earlier. He also had 4 wives. Again, the same thing. Got married real early before he probably should have, et cetera. And then the Hollywood influence with Keely Smith, et cetera. Yeah, same sort of.
And then when he got with Lucille Wilson, his last wife, you could see all of a sudden the maturity of the man. And he finally understood what it took to be in a relationship, be true to yourself, be true to the person you're with. And of course, there's the stories about other people and things like that, but we don't try to get into that. But with he and Lucille, she was his rock.
Yes.
And she was the one that said, hey, if you're going to be with me, we got to settle down. And what do you want to do? And he was like, you know what? That's what I want to do. Lucille was the one that bought the house that's in Queens. and gave him his first house. He'd never had a house. With all the money he had, with all the fame he had, never had a house. He never settled down. But she was able to get him to look at life and say, you know, enjoy the life you have and enjoy what's around you. You don't have to keep running. And I think that I found that very fascinating. It also touched me because I'm an African American entertainer, and I have a wife who basically did that for me. My beautiful wife, Dawn, was like, hey, you know, everything doesn't have to be about the entertainment. Everything doesn't have to be about the show. It could be about you and me, and we can have our family and we can enjoy it. And that's a job. That job is not you. It's part of you, but that job is not you. And Louis learned that the job wasn't who he was. He was Louis Armstrong, who just happened to be one of the greatest jazz musicians and one of the greatest entertainers of all time. But that's not all he was. And it was with his time with Lucille that he understood that.
I will drink to that. And again, we didn't talk about, I brought a little 2014. It was the year we met. So I made 14-year-old Glenn Levitt. And the reason I did that, of course, was to honor our getting together at Aladdin. And I don't know what did you bring in?
I am, you know, I have to be good, but I like sweet things. But I brought Pure Leaf, low sugar, you know, tea, because I'm a diabetic and I want to make sure that I can still have my sweet without, you know, diet.
Right. You made the producers very happy by that, I'm sure.
Yes, you know.
Let's take a little bit of a deviation. We talked all about Louis Armstrong, considered perhaps by many people to be the king of jazz in many ways, at least certainly in the early parts of it. You're going to be, interestingly enough, playing another king.
Yes.
In Spamalot.
Yes, I am.
Reprising the role you did of King Arthur. Tell me a little bit about, first off, the Washington, DC encores that you did of that, and again, how it's going to be going to Broadway, and then maybe a little insight as to how are you going to be able to rehearse Louis Armstrong during the time you're going to be playing King Arthur.
So the fun part is, I have a reputation for my friend Nick Walker, who's playing Sir Galahad in Spamalot, made a hashtag "No More Jobs for James," because I have a habit of being able to do more than one or two or three jobs at the same time. And so when we had a wonderful time in the Kennedy Center in DC doing Spamalot with a fantastic cast that we had, and we just had a wonderful, amazing, crazy time doing this brilliant show by Monty Python. And I love the show, but never saw myself in it. But when they said they wanted to play the king, I was like, what a wonderful opportunity to do this. And I don't often get to play the straight man. Usually I'm the one doing all the zany stuff, but with the king, you're kind of like the straight man, like everybody else is doing crazy stuff around you. So when they decided to take it to Broadway, I was already contracted to do Louis Armstrong. And both teams of the A Wonderful World and Spamalot worked together to work out a wonderful schedule for me. And it's an absolute insane schedule. I will be, while doing one show, flying back to do another show, flying back to the other show, and back and forth. And, the schedule's worked out. It's seamless. It's nuts. And then when we leave Chicago for our last thing, I literally fly. We have a matinee. And after the matinee, my wife and I fly back to New York and we open Spamalot.
That's fantastic. I was trying to figure out how you're going to be able to do 2 places at once, but obviously that they figured it out for you.
Oh, yeah.
Again, I've got a few pictures I'd like to throw up, and maybe you can just tell me a little bit. First off, I know who you're dancing with in this particular picture. That is wonderful Vanessa Williams, who I've had as well. She's actually signed on as a producer.
Yes, she's one of our wonderful producers for the show. She's a wonderful lady. I've known her for a long time. And just when she came on, I really was so excited to be a part of any project that she's a part of. So she's been nothing but a blessing to the show. And I'm so glad she gets to be a part of this.
And then a couple of the other shots you got, this is some of your cast.
Yes.
4 wives.
The 4 wives, they are Khalifa in the orange. She plays Daisy. That is Jenny Harney, who plays Little Hardin. That is Taria Campbell, who plays Lucille. And then there's Brennan, who plays Daisy. And they are all amazing. Yeah. You guys are not ready for what these ladies bring in.
Khalifa in the Lion King, as well as in Little Shop of Horrors. So I know what
yes.
a beautiful voice she is, And then, of course, you've got the whole cast here.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And again, I don't know, do you have any of the creative staff in there, the director as well?
Let's see. No, that one is just actually. Let's see. I'm looking around. No, that is just Vanessa and the cast for this. For
Okay.
this, that's all cast, and our cast is incredible. I can't wait for you guys to see the dancing in the show is going to just blow the roof off of the Saenger Theater.
All right, we're gonna end up in just a little bit. I just wanted to finalize. You had the honor of announcing the Tony nominations this year.
Yes.
And tell me a little bit about how was that?
That was nuts. It was really, really fun to be able to do that. And it was during the pandemic, 2020. I got to announce the awards, and they called, and I had to direct it and produce it and do it in my own house. And it was great. Like, if you look on IMDb, it was like produced and directed by James Iglehart. I was like, yeah, I guess it was. So it was a wonderful honor to be asked and to be a part of it.
Well, thank you very much for being able to share some time with us. I know you have a hard stop right now, so we're going to say goodnight. Thank you again, James Monroe Iglehart, who I should say is
actually it's Iglehart. It's long I. James Iglehart. Oh yes.
And I will definitely not make that mistake again. But again,
no problem.
Louis Armstrong, A Wonderful World opens October the 1st, plays through the 8th, and then you take it to Chicago about a
right
week
to Chicago.
Later, right.
Yes.
And then it's going to be playing in New York right after that.
We're hoping that's the plan.
It depends on when Spamalot, I guess, if it gets extended or not, as to when it'll open. I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, it's about that, and of course, Broadway stuff like finding a house. I mean, it's always those little things. It's not that we don't want it to go. It's not that people don't want it to go. It's those little things that have to be put in place first before we can say yes, it is. So
anyway,
yeah.
Thank you for being with us, and again, much success. Break legs, do what you got to do, and I can't wait to see how you bring Louis Armstrong to life on the stage.
Thank you so much. Gonna have a great night.
All right, everybody. Bye. See you at the theater.